live. It is Sunday, the 27th of August, 2023. I'm reading out of Eyes of Horus. It is a Far Sight memory book by Joan Marshal Grants. In this life, she is Rahab. He lives in the Nomarch of the Oryx, and it is a beautiful place, but there is danger coming. He is now 16, and this is part 3, and this is the second chapter. HOTEP-RA. Before leaving for HOTEP-RA, I decided to tell Kelsey about the girl beyond the river, and explained why it had been necessary to tell father first. She listened without interrupting while I told her about the 2 dreams. They were so real to me. It was only when I spoke of them that I realized how difficult it was going to be to make father believe I was not free to be betrothed to the daughter of the heir. Since Kelsey had seen Nefa invoke Ra, she was no longer scornful of dreams. She asked, "Is she very beautiful?" "I don't know. I feel she must be, but I can't prove it." Kelsey nodded. "I think you're right. She told you she might be fat. Only someone who knew she was beautiful would dare to say that. What kind of person do you think she is? Noble? Or just the daughter of ordinary parents?" "I don't know that either, Kelsey." "Dear Rahab, I never realized what an exciting kind of person you are. I always knew you were the very nicest kind, but not so very adventuring. You will be like Isis looking for bits of her husband, only of course you'll find her all in one piece." I was always a little shocked when Kelsey made jokes about the gods, but had given up telling her so, as she only laughed at me for being pompous. "Rahab, I should go to the heir as soon as you can." "But why? I told you father will have to give up that idea." "How do you know she isn't the heir's daughter? Think how nice it would be if she was. Then everyone would be pleased, father and you, and probably even me. I've heard the heir's son is very handsome." "You didn't mind father choosing me for Nomarch instead of your husband, did you, Kelsey?" "Of course I didn't. It was my idea just as much as his. I should hate to have a husband who only chose me because he wanted the Oryx. I want to be married for me, not that I want to marry anyone yet." "Poor Sebak. So you've noticed he's rather in love with me? I'm glad you didn't realize it sooner, or you wouldn't have been so impressed at the way he listened to my plans against the pestilence. Sometimes I think I shall marry him, and then I think that he'd become a little dull after year. Anyway, I've decided not to marry anyone until I'm 16, even though that is rather old." Then she changed the subject. "I wish I could be with you at HOTEP-RA, but one of us ought to stay here with father. I'll often come over to see you, though. Father never really notices if I'm here or not, provided he isn't disturbed to make a decision that I could have made for him." I had said goodbye to father the night before and did not see him again before leaving home. Kelsey came down to the river with me and watched from the bank until I was out of sight. It was a very still evening. The only sound was the creak of our oars and the water dripping from their blades. At last I could begin my search, not only for the girl beyond the river, though to me she was more important than anything else, but for knowledge to fit me for my role in the plan by which Egypt would find her greatness. I reached HOTEP-RA by late afternoon, for I had come in father's boat of 12 oars and made a fast journey. Hanuk was away from home, and his sister had gone to her husband's family to wait the birth of her second child. I was alone with Rodan. "At last we can talk in peace," he said, "without time standing at our elbow to count our words. Your father has told me that when the Watchers have established their rule in Egypt, he will make you the Nomarch. His is a wise decision, for when that day comes, the Oryx must be led by one who has the power of our authority." "Couldn't he appoint you Nomarch, Rodan? He told me himself it would have been better if you had been born to his name." "Each man must play his own role, and I can do more as the leader of the 100 of HORUS than I could if I were the oryx. And why should I break one of the Watcher's laws, which says, authority shall pass with the blood unless the blood is tainted? That is what the Watchers are for, to see that authority is not abused and that no member of a family exercises hereditary privilege which is not justified in his own person. For many years no one within the oryx has been oppressed, and we have continually heightened the contentment of our people. Now the time is nearly come when we must put into wider practice what we have learned, so that our peace extends throughout Egypt. That is why I have gathered together the Watchers, who dwell in HOTEP-RA. Some have been here for more than 15 years, and others are but newly arrived. Each is being trained according to the role they best play in the new pattern. Fear is their common enemy, and each has shown that they know love to be stronger than fear. Fear uses 1,000 weapons, and we must encounter all of them. Every Watcher is trained to fight a particular form of attack. And we need Watchers of every rank and calling. A goldsmith, even if he were wise as a high priest, would find no hearing among soldiers. And the wife of a ploughman will listen more readily to another woman of the same caste. You, who have always lived in the oryx, will find it difficult at first to realize how people in the rest of Egypt are shut away from each other by man-made barriers of rank and caste and wealth, like grubs in a gigantic honeycomb. As well as the 500 who are living in my villages, there are many Watchers outside the oryx, nobles, merchants, husbandmen, even officials who hold seal under Pharaoh. Nefer-Ankh knows of nearly 50 priests who, when the time comes, will bring truth to the new temples. Only 50 men of truth in a priesthood of thousands. Most of those who now live on my estate originally came to the oryx for sanctuary. Ask some of them to tell you why they came here, and so learn what you may expect to find when you go beyond our boundaries. Fear is not the only enemy of the Watchers, though it is the most powerful manifestation of Set. He has other ways of keeping men in the shadow. He imprisons them in little false laws, pride of possession that is without generosity, pride of skill that is misused, pride of rank without true nobility. In the rest of Egypt, a man is judged by his birth or by the royal favor, but within our ranks, wisdom with character is the seal of authority. It was usual for Egyptian soldiers of equal rank to treat each other as distant kinsmen, so it had not been difficult for Sebek and the others who were working with him to come to know many who lived in other nomes without arousing suspicion that they had come to talk of more than the arts of war. Soldiers speak freely amongst themselves, and so it was easy to suggest that most of their grievances would no longer exist where the warrior's code more scrupulously followed. Many of the captains with whom Sebek had discussed mutual problems were eager that the army should fulfill their old obligations as practiced in the oryx. They found it difficult to keep their men contented when they had so little to do, and some of them sighed for the days when a warlike pharaoh led his armies in search of conquest. The captains in every nome were usually kinsmen of the ruling family, and they deeply resented the fact that the nomarchs frequently had to furnish heavy bribes to those who assessed the tribute due to Pharaoh, so that an excuse would not be found to dispossess them of their lands. So great was the power of corrupt officials that some nomarchs handed over to them twice the amount which would eventually be recorded on the tallies of the royal treasure. Roland told me that even 2 centuries ago the royal officials did not abuse their authority, which was then held only by men of personal integrity. Their old title was the Eyes of Pharaoh, and their twice-yearly progress through the 2 lands was important, less for the collection of tribute than because through them any complaint would be taken direct to the royal ear. Now they had degenerated into spies and tax-gatherers. As such, were feared and hated. Since Pharaoh had built a new capital, now known as the Royal City, where the river divides, he no longer tried to conceal from the people of the south which of the two crowns ruled Egypt. He valued the south chiefly for the riches which came from it, and from the land of gold, but he chose most of the powerful officials and other nobles who comprised his court from those families on whose loyalty he could depend, because they belonged to 3 royal nomes which, in their own interest, would always support the dynasty. At the time of the dawn, which was the name given to the day when secrecy would no longer be necessary, 5 of the nomarchs of the south would no longer be allowed to rule. But in each of these nomes, one of the eyes of Horus had already been chosen from amongst their kinsmen, whom it was known the people would acclaim and who would assume authority without bloodshed. 3 of these nomarchs were too old to change their ideas, but had agreed to abdicate in favor of their heirs when the time came. Another was cruel and could not be trusted with authority, and the 5th was corrupt and in due course would be banished. Nevertheless, these 5 gnomes would rise with us when the word was given. In addition, the hare and the jackal were our friends, and the leopard would side with us, because the nomarch recognized that the oryx was better administered than any other gnome. The tortoise would follow the leopard, for the 2 houses were closely united. So the armies of 10 gnomes would follow the watchers. The 3 powerful royal gnomes might have to be counted as enemies, but we hoped that our action would be so swift that by the time the news far I got. Bye-bye.